The ghost light, a single bulb left center stage after each performance, has traditionally served as a supernatural offering to those who came before us and those we have lost, to ensure that the theater, their theater, never goes dark.
That the magic of theater continues. Theaters from Broadway to the West End, Los Angeles to Savannah may be closed for now, but their ghost lights remain lit.
Our spirits remain hungry, our responsibilities clear. We look at this as an opportunity, a chance to build on the work we've done.
A chance to embrace our theatrical roots and create new adventures.
What we do now paves the way for the years to come, for the Savannah rep of the future.
We promise that the ghost light will burn brightly until it is safe to begin again.
It is our responsibility to carry on the traditions that precede us. We are Savannah Rep.
A home for great stories and great theater. The hands of the clock will move again, and this is not the end of the story.
It's a new beginning.
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 And we'll see you soon.
Do we have places? Okay. Do you need me to page them? Okay, thank you. All right, and checking in with the conductor. You all set? Have a good show, Maestra. Any places? All right. Let's do this. Have a good show, everyone. Stand by house to half and house out. House to half. Go. Lights 2 and house out. Go.
Friday, 5 p.m. Need a better catchphrase. Welcome to OnStageOff, episode 8. Last week was our 007 James Bond episode. Again, thank you to Chris Bass for doing that utterly terrifying Bond villain monologue improvisationally. I have had nightmares every night since. So, Chris, thank you for that. My childhood has now caught up to me. Hello, I'm Ryan McCurdy. That's right. I am back again with my hair styled and the same blue shirt on. I will be wearing this blue shirt for every episode of OnStageOff, and I'll wash it at some point. I wanted you all to know that we are having a really good time making this show, and as I was just discussing with my extraordinary guests before the show started, I did promise to do this until we're in rehearsals again. So at a certain point, I'm going to run out of people that I know, although I'm very grateful for the ones that I do that have joined me on the show. So if you have a good idea for a guest for this show, or if you want to be a guest on this show, email us at whatsup@savannarep.org and let us know who it is. And if it's you, I mean, you can just say that, or you could like send me your CV with like highlights and things, or you could pretend to be someone else and recommend yourself. I mean, whatever you want to do is fine with me. We are having a great time with this show. I want to point out that I'm still in Virginia. My family extended our trip because mental health is key right now, and Manhattan is going to be there when we get back. So felt like since we'd come this far to be in Virginia, we added a little bit of extra time to our trip. So this week's episode is brought to you by Timeshare Art. Yes, that's right, Timeshare Art. We're not sure who the artist is, but we are sure that the same 2 paintings are in every matching unit. Timeshare Art, for when you only want to pay for a week out of the year. Listen, I'm super excited about our show. We have on 3 extraordinary friends from across the world of the theatrical arts and the performance arts. My first guest is a Tony-nominated director, Broadway, off-Broadway, regionally, has worked everywhere. And in one of his recent productions, he directed a scene in which Raul Esparza made salmon with real ingredients on a stovetop for 6 minutes at the beginning of Act 2. So in honor of my first guest, I will be using the first 6 minutes of this episode and our interview to order Uber Eats. Please welcome to the show, Moritz von Stuelpnagel. Hello!
Hey, Ryan, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Yeah, all right.
I
was looking forward to salmon. I thought maybe you might make me some salmon. I mean, I know we're far away, but it would sure hit the spot right about now.
The fish is really good down here, and we have been cooking more. I mean, bless Manhattan, bless everything about it, but the kitchen in my apartment is about the size of this laptop. So the food, what we can do culinarily is a little bit regressive. So being here, we have cooked a lot more. I know that you are somewhere in the woods as well, so you are not currently in the city yourself.
Yeah.
Do you cook when you're there, or have you found sort of the restaurant crew that you like around there?
No, I love to cook. I mean, I find it to be like a really therapeutic way of just sort of getting my head on straight, and and then at the end you get a reward of whatever it is you've made, cookies or steak or whatever it is that you've made. So it's definitely a wonderful thing to do.
A nice metaphor for theater, that you work really hard and you have a reward at the end. Going back to the salmon.
It depends on how the show turns out, I suppose.
I was being very cautious. I was thinking that there's definitely been somewhere I got to the end and it felt like the food had been spoiled. But the salmon was not. You directed Seared in last season, which it was just last season, wasn't it? That feels like 17 years ago.
Yeah, it was just last season. We did it at MCC Theater, which is an off-Broadway theater in New York. It was written by Teresa Rebeck, starring Raul Esparza, as you indicated. And yeah, because it was about a restaurant and it took place inside of a restaurant, or in the kitchen of the restaurant, we had to learn all the cooking. So we brought in a master chef, actually somebody who had been Robert De Niro's personal chef for a little while, and he sort of gave us a crash course on how to be a master chef. We improved all of our knife skills, which I'm really grateful for. I don't want to oversell myself about my knife skills because they're not so great, but I will say that it was really informative to sort of really understand what it is that they do, because it's a kind of virtuoso feat that you don't get to see every day. It's sort of happening out of view, unless you're at one of these newfangled restaurants where you're sitting at the chef's table or what have you. But otherwise, it's incredible what they do back there and how quickly. When I cook, I always think of when you see a recipe, right? And they tell you the prep time and the cooking time or whatever it is at the beginning of the recipe, and I'm always like, that's malarkey. There's no way that's. It takes me 4 times as long as it always says in the recipe or whatever. But these guys, they have to crank this food out, otherwise everybody in the restaurant gets antsy. So I know that they are a whole group of artists who right now are struggling even more so in a tough business to maintain their livelihoods and maintain the business that they've worked so hard for. And we felt honored to, try to tell that story for them off Broadway.
And I think, it was a beautiful show. Obviously, Teresa Rebeck has such a flair for dialogue. Had you directed her work before?
Yeah, we had done on Broadway. We had done a premiere of her production, Bernhardt Hamlet, which was about the famed 19th century actress Sarah Bernhardt taking on the role of Hamlet, and of course all the controversy that would surround that in the 19th century. And so she's somebody I've long admired. She's a writer whose work I've followed for a long, long time, and she's incredible, and she's an incredible collaborator, and we've really gone on well together.
That's great. Thinking about the salmon on stage, it was I saw at least 2 interviews pop up when Seared was.
I think about it all the time.
Yeah, I know. I'm just going to keep saying salmon on stage, and by the end of the interview, see, you are done in like 10 minutes, and then while I do the rest of the show, you can go make something delicious. If you feel like bringing it back at the end of the show and doing like a plate demonstration, we certainly won't say no. But the interviews that popped up because of the culinary training that the company went through, and because of sort of the high wire act of the food preparation. I mean, it kind of reminds. It's like David Cromer's Our Town on acid to be doing that much food prep on stage. The phrase showed up again that you are the director of Impossible Plays. When I first was introduced to you, someone told me you were the director of Impossible Plays. I am wondering, I'm very curious, did you create that? Was that given to you? Do you believe it's true? How did that happen?
It's a great question. So I had worked with a company called Studio 42, which was an off company in New York City. And they were sort of going through a regime change, and they asked me to take over. And I thought that was absolutely ridiculous. Why would I want to do that? But then they sort of convinced me to do it. And it became clear that if we were going to continue to exist through a regime change, through, a new format, we had to really have a reason for why we existed. There's so many theaters in New York City. So what made ours unique and special and different? And at the time, I knew a lot of writers who, had one really great play that every theater loved and would do a reading of, but they would never produce because they would always say the same word in the rejection letter. It was unproducible. It was either too big or too complicated or too risque or too, irreverent or too impossible in some way. So we were like, well, why don't we be the home for those plays? Why don't we demonstrate that you don't actually need all the money in the world to do impossible feats, and that an audience might be really excited to see something on stage that they didn't realize could be possible, and that you wouldn't see if you were just sitting around on your couch at home. And it kind of stuck. I don't really, because I led the company, that sort of came home to me. And frankly, it's, those kinds of artistic challenges and getting the designers and actors working together to figure out how do we do this, how do we even begin, was really exciting to me.
I think the nickname really kind of stuck when you and Stephen Boyer pulled off another impossible play with Hand to God. This is my
very flattering picture.
Well, there's lots of pictures. There's lots of pictures of Boyer in that, and lots of pictures of Boyer in general, and that is the one that just speaks to me. So yes, that was the first time I had seen the nickname, and then I'm going to show a picture of a show that one of the shows I got to know you on, which is Important Hats which was at MTC in 2015. I think Hand to God certainly has its complications. Important Hats, when I first read it, it's the only play that I have ever read where I got to a certain point, which was where a Neanderthal type Yeti creature ejaculated, for lack of a better phrase, into a space helmet. And I got to that point, and that wasn't the climax, nor was that the strangest thing that happened in that piece. I do remember thinking climax. It was there were many climaxes. Yeah. I remember thinking, okay, this is tricky. This is tricky. It's got the writing of a film with the budget of a Marvel television show, but it's intended to be done on stage. Maybe this is why he has the nickname. And then I saw you first day of rehearsal just absolutely craft the piece into something manageable. About that show in particular, which a lot of people may not be familiar with, how did you distill the concepts that were so high wire, the film and TV aesthetics and the constant location shifting? How did you find the directorial language you needed to pull that off?
Well, so that show, Important Hats of the 20th Century, and the writer's Nick Jones, who's a real kind of genius. It's about rival fashion designers in the 1930s. One who is excited about high fashion couture, and the other one who wants to introduce practical clothes. Unisex, for the everyman, sweatshirts and tracksuits and all kinds of things that just sort of completely upend the industry of what fashion should be. And it turns out, he's actually been teaming up with a mad scientist to use a time hat to travel into 1990s Albany to steal the clothes of a teenage stoner from his closet. And that's where these clothes are coming from.
It just occurred to me.
Sort of like, yeah.
Because we're watching The Vow on HBO right now obsessively, and it occurs to me that a lot of weird stuff happens in Albany. I'm sorry, please continue, Moritz.
Apparently that's the case. So because it was set in the 1930s and it kind of followed a film noir aesthetic, that actually felt to me like a great entry point, because we could use the elements of film noir to both create something that was heightened and not having to be quite as naturalistic as some other plays. So, for example, when I think of film noir, it's always sort of shadowy, and there's a lot of geometric architecture that kind of imply themselves rather than having to be fully represented in some ways. So all of the many locations, including all the way through time, because they do go through many chapters in the history of fashion all the way through the world, we didn't have to fully represent it. The actors could take us there. The many, many costumes could take us there. The music, which you were a part of in an incredible way, could take us there. And we didn't need the sets to do all that work. And the fact that the actors could use 5 or 6 rotating set pieces that could in one scene be one thing and another scene be another thing felt in some ways really virtuosic of the set itself, but also the cast to transform the space. And that to me was the fun of it. But it was the film noir part of it that was the jumping off point.
Yeah, and so much light, so much shadow, so much attention to the visual detail of that. And it reminded me of a I was doing a little background on this just to remind myself of how many things you've done. I had forgotten that you worked with one of my favorite playwrights, Larissa Fasthorse, on Thanksgiving Play, which again feels like 7 years ago, but was very, very recent. It went straight from playwrights to becoming, I think, one of the most produced plays in the United States in its first season that was available. You have worked with so many playwrights. You've done so many great things. You also have a long-standing relationship with Mike Liu, who with Tiger Style and Teenage Dick. And I was reading a great article about the sort of the adjustments that your set designer, who I apologize, name is of Tiger Style, name is escaping me.
Wilson Chin.
Yes, was talking about reconstituting the Alliance's version of it to, I think it was Huntington that it went to next. He was talking about changing all of that and sort of reformatting the things that they had learned from Alliance. It made me think about that idea of the set obviously having to change for the house. Do you as a director find that the changes of space, obviously you nurtured Hand to God through a lot of venues as well. Do you change the way that you approach the text, or is it basically just sort of a respacing of what you'd already created?
No, I think you always have to be aware of the relationship that you have with an audience. I mean, that's, when you're in a theater, that's sort of the primary difference, is that we are or should be included somehow in the event. And so the relationship that the actors and the design have to give the audience access in some way, so that you don't feel like you're a million miles away, or you don't feel like it's overwhelming you in some way, that you have both a comfortable relationship, but also an inclusive relationship to the thing that's on stage, feels really important to me. Interestingly, about Tiger Style, the Huntington is now going to produce it as an audio play. So we are going to reformat some of the ideas so that it's an auditory experience, whereas before that was such a visual experience. And so we are in the Mensa puzzle of figuring out how that works, but we're excited to do that.
And that actually that dovetails great too. And I forgot to say this at the beginning for those that are watching, that if you have anything you'd like me to run by Moritz, or you just want to praise him, or if you want to say anything in the comments, I do see the ones. This is the follow-up is I see the comments, so please be nice to me in the comments. But you can comment on Facebook and YouTube, and I'll see them. And if it's a good question, I'll put it up. And if it's a bad question, I'll nod politely at it. But that dovetails to what I hope is a good question, which is you've got an audio play already on the calendar outside of Tiger Style, and it's with Audible, who is a company you've worked with before. First, tell us about the one you did a little bit ago, and tell us about the one you've got coming up next.
Yeah, so the first one that I did was by Leah Namanka Winkler, and it was in the style of a podcast, because podcasts are so popular at the moment. And it was about a real life stabbing that happened in a middle school, Japanese middle school, and that figure, that young woman who killed her friend. Sorry, this is so dark, but it's actually a real awful story. That weird story took off on the internet, as so many very strange things on the internet do, and she kind of became this strange cult sensation for reasons that are a little murky, but also fascinating to try to understand. Why is it that this awful crime, or this strange thing that happened, suddenly became the fascination of so many people? And so we did it in a kind of serial format, which was, and it was produced by Audible, who you may know for doing audiobooks, but they're now also doing audio plays. And the new one that I'm doing is about, it's called Alexa, Why Can't You Love Me? About an older widower who is alone and he tries to find some companionship with his Alexa, your Amazon machine, and strictly in a platonic sense, I will say that, but in the way that one can be really on their own at times, especially in moments of grief. He attempts to see if he can find any comfort through the frustrating machine that some of us have constantly eavesdropping on us in our homes.
And when you don't have it, suddenly you find how much you've relied on. I've been asking the device that is not in Virginia for the weather for the last 10 days. So you only realize how much you rely on it when there is dead silence, which is so cruel after years of talking back and forth.
That awful dead silence.
When can people hear / purchase / what is the method with which they will hear your direction of this new piece?
So you can download it from Audible, and it will be available the week before Thanksgiving. So you can listen with your family, or if you're on a long drive somewhere for Thanksgiving or for the holidays thereafter. It's funny, it's moving. It stars Judd Hirsch and Maria Divya, and they're just both fantastic in it. And it was a real pleasure to record. We're now in the post-production phase of, putting all the dialogue and music and sound effects together. So that's been a joy of a process to work on.
Awesome. I love getting to see you. It's been a hot second since we have been in the same room, let alone the same digital room. I know that the Savannah Rep audience is very fond of Hand to God in particular, and what you crafted with that. And so I know there are a lot of people that were very excited you were going to be on today. So we appreciate you taking the time to be with us.
Well, it's really a pleasure, and this was such a joy. So I think it's great that you're doing this, and hi to everybody out there, and hope you're hanging in, and can't wait to see you in the theater.
Awesome. My first guest was Moritz von Stuelpnagel, who is a Tony-nominated director. He got Kevin Kline to play the piano, and he put a hand puppet on Stephen Boyer's hand. There's nothing the man can't do, and we're very grateful to have had him. We'll be right back after this ad for a company that does not represent us with Ellie Pyle.
You can take a bite, take an alphabet's bite. You can taste a bunch of letters that go crunch.
Alphabets, all right.
But take care, there's a mad microchip out to get you over there.
Flip, how on hip.
You can sip that drip when you bite the word chips. You can take a bite. Bite a C. You can take a bite. Bite an H, bite an I. You can take a bite. Bite a P. If you want to start the day with a breakfast you can play.
You can take a bite of post-alphabet cereal.
Part of this nutritious breakfast. It's yummy.
Always forget how long the post roll is, which is not long at all. I was dancing. That was authentic. You all saw it. Oh boy. I am very excited about our next guest. I usually do a little bit of background on our guests because I want to make sure I know the breadth of their work. This might be the only guest that I think I know most of the things about. Therefore, this high wire act is going to be that I have prepared nothing for this interview. I'm very excited to do this. Please welcome my best friend, Ellie Pyle, to the show. Hi, Ellie.
Hello.
I just outed you as my best friend. Is that all right?
That's fine. That sounds good. Did you pick that commercial just for me because it sounded like the Arbiter song from Chess?
Yes, that is exactly why it went where it went.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Good. Hello.
Hello. I don't know. You've been watching the show a little bit, and you've seen some of our '80s ads. The quality of the music is just like exceptional from like 82 to 89. There was like, and I want to figure out if there's a documentary already or something of that. I want to find out why for 7 years all these incredible songwriters were doing these catchy like 30-second pastiches, you know?
Well, I would assume the answer is money.
Well, I mean, I know why they did it, but why were they allowed to do? Why were they allowed to do it?
Well, I mean, but if you think about what defines the 80s, that's a big part of it. So I don't know. Maybe they just decided that was the flavor that time needed.
The what's great is, you know, there's so much money in the three like the Gillette, the best a man can get. There's so much money in those. I would be curious to find out how much they got paid to write literally 10 times the length of that. But Gail Bird is already here with comments. Gail Bird says, your whole life has been getting you prepared for this interview. Hello to you both, by the way. Thank you, Gail Bird.
It's Gail's birthday, so happy birthday, Gail.
It's her 45th birthday, and we are delighted to celebrate it here on OnStageOff. Ellie, I'm going to get right to it. There's so many things we can talk about. You are an actor, a director, a writer, a producer. You're exceptional at the things that you do, but I want to talk about, first of all, the Savannah connection that people that are new to the city might not realize that you had in the past, and the Savannah connection you have now. And then we'll talk about what you do when you're in Los Angeles, which, judging by your staircase behind you, you currently are.
Yes, that is where I am. So I went to SCAD and got an MFA there, and then was the performing arts coordinator for the city of Savannah for about 2 years, from the fall of 2008 to the fall of 2010.
And then you were in New York, and
Yes,
then you were in...
because I stumbled into a job as an assistant editor on Spider-Man, and then, just surprising everyone, ended up being a comic book editor for the next 10 years of my career.
A question that maybe you don't necessarily have the answer to, but if you do, I'll be impressed. How many plays have you written since you started in Richmond?
How many plays have I written ever?
How many plays have you written ever? How many plays that have come off the drawing board and are producible have you written?
I am gonna ballpark it at 20.
Okay.
I think there's a line in The Men in Between, which is a novel of mine that I revisited recently, that cites it at 13. So guessing how many years there have been since then, I would say maybe about 20. Which means I was much more prolific in my younger years, but those were shorter plays. So I'm gonna take that.
I also love. It hadn't occurred to me that you had done that. I love that you set benchmarks in your own work to sort of like set like the mile markers of your own career, which is great.
I didn't do it on purpose, but yeah, because a lot of my work has an autobiographical bent to it, or at least the work that has an autobiographical bent to it has a very autobiographical bent to it. It is always interesting that I find myself sometimes thinking back into my work to date something. And then of course I have to ask myself the question, is that what really happened, or is that the version of it that I wrote? And what is the difference between those two things?
And I think whenever you ask me for my opinion on it, I always say whichever is the most entertaining theatrically seems to always be where I lean generally. I mean, whatever's going to play better is what I like. So.
Oh, certainly. It's just when I'm trying to reconstruct my own memories as something different from the 20 drafts of a thing that I wrote. Sometimes the real version of events just disappears entirely.
I did want to talk about that though, because I've always something that really fascinates me about your work, which I really like, is that you are able to work inside of this incredibly self-referential idiom where you are recapping parts of your own life and mixing in other people from your life, and then you're always able to mix in people from that are sort of tangential but are able to take whatever size role they need in yours in the story, and then you are also able to make these beautiful whole cloth fantasy and sci-fi and genre epics like Fall of the Water City. What do you turn something specifically in your brain to be able to work inside of fantasy and sci-fi that you don't when you're working on something that is rooted in your own past, or is it all coming from the same source?
The secret there is that Fall of the Water City, for example, which is my fantasy pilot, started out long ago, like 2003, long ago, as
I very vaguely remember that
as being an idea that was based on characters who I had cast with various people that I knew in my life. Now, the many years later that we are, it has evolved into something that is its completely own thing. But I always need the seed of something, which is why I think I'm able to make my money as an editor, is that I'm very good at taking something and changing it, more so than kind of building something out of nothing, having something come from full cloth. Now, it may be that by the time I'm done with it, it's completely unrecognizable as whatever it was to start with. But I find that's why one of my favorite things to do is writing for a company. Because if I know who the actors are, then great. Then you have this mixture of who that actor is, plus whatever person's voice inspired this character in the first place. Which, you know, I have joked occasionally that I'm a sea witch. I collect voices, and so it isn't always necessarily that like anything anyone did influences a character. I wrote a pilot about a guardian angel who was a big comics nerd several years ago. And his voice was based on someone who I was working with at the time, who had been my intern for several years. And, you know, but I loved the idea of this guardian angel having this very like guy in his 20s who speaks internet kind of voice. So you never know, but and very often it's the juxtaposition of two things that the story comes out of. That if you can find those two things that go together but shouldn't, there's a story then inherently in why they do.
Is there a genre you are waiting for the perfect opportunity to write in that you haven't yet, or is everything as satisfying once you've sort of got the pen on paper?
That's a good question. We were actually talking earlier this week about the fact that I haven't taken a stab at horror, which is something that maybe I should do at some point. But for me, it's very much, I carry scripts around in the back of my mind for sometimes years at a time. As I said, you know, Fall of the Water City, I carried around since 2003 and wrote in many different forms, which is another thing that I'll do, is that sometimes it takes me a while to find the right medium for a script. I was finishing off a draft of something last night that has been a play, a screenplay, and a pilot is what I finished the draft of last night. So, and I find that that's helpful too, that like switching modes, you know, in terms of media can give me a very different perspective on things because of the different constraints that each medium has. But I find that very often stories will kind of appear to me as their genre and you know, with their core, and then it just becomes you know, a question of when am I going to do that? Though actually, now that I think about it, Heretics, which is the last play of mine that you were in, was an idea that I carried around for a long time. It ended up, in its current form, Heretics is an allegorical romance during the Albigensian Crusade, where you've got, you know, the Cathars eventually toward the end, spoilers, you know, being burned, and, you know, it's kind of this romance.
Too soon, Ellie.
But the strange thing there was that the seed of that idea was actually the same seed as my play Sources, which takes place on election night 2016, which also wasn't the plan when I wrote that, but that's how it ended up. And those two plays both came from the same seed, which was kind of this couple arguing about ideas of legacy and what that meant, and martyrdom in various forms and so forth. So I thought when I had written Sources that I had, you know, satisfied that muse and I was done, and I was incorrect. And then, you know, Heretics came along a couple years later and was like, nope, you still need to do this. And but once I sit down to write, it takes me approximately 6 weeks is what I've been averaging to get a producible draft of a script.
The muse wants what the muse wants.
Yeah, it does. I've become an absolute crazy person for a bit. And, you know, at the end, there's a play.
Please talk to us. I mean, obviously, I could tell our audience about it as well, but you were thoughtful enough to come on. So tell us about Bespoke Plays, which is something that I I came in after the formation. So since you were there for the formation, tell us about it, because it is exciting and it makes me happy.
So Bespoke Plays is a new play reading series that we do out here in Los Angeles, and it was founded by myself and Christine Boylan, who is a playwright and television writer based out here in LA, who I met through the fact that she would have a group of us over one Sunday a month to read Shakespeare plays in her living room. So eventually she decided, hey, we know a bunch of playwrights. What if we read some plays? And didn't form a company, but read some plays. And I said, well, you don't know this about me, but I know how to form a theater company. And within 48 hours, we had a theater company. It was actually really shocking that, like, we had a venue, we had dates, we had a cast. It was crazy. And then we did, I think, and you can correct me if I get this number wrong.
Oh boy.
13 readings between September of 2018 and we actually did our last reading the weekend before we went into lockdown.
And we're scheduled for a New York premiere of Heretics a few weeks after that, which was the
April.
Yeah. So we got one up in March and are holding. One of those things is when you have producership qualities in a company, it's one of the best things you can do in this era is say for sure something is postponed, it is not canceled, because it brings so many people so much joy to have the idea that things are being ported forward into the future instead of just being forgotten. So that's what Heretics is. But
yeah,
so what does the company do specifically?
So we do staged readings of new plays, and in some cases we have had plays that have come hot off the presses into rehearsal, which is always, exciting and an adventure. In other cases, we've had people pull plays out of drawers. We had one writer who pulled a play out of the drawer that had been there since 1995, and it was incredibly ahead of its time back then. So nobody got it back then, but now we found it had a striking amount of resonance. So we do them as staged readings. We have blocking. It varies a little from play to play. Our mission statement is that we like to gear our readings to the goals of the playwright and the readiness of the play. So if you have something that's ready for every theater to see it and want to do your full production, then great, we will invite everyone we can think of. If you have something that needs more of a family, living room style debut, then we are capable of taking that approach as well, though we rarely have. Most of what we've done has been stuff that's ready to go into production tomorrow, which makes it all the more frustrating that we've got this great backlog of stuff that we would like to get out there. But during the shutdown, we have actually, instead of doing the monthly readings that we did with Bespoke, we have been doing weekly private readings. So like the living room style, let's just get the family together and see if this can stand. We have been doing those weekly. So we have done, I believe we're in the vicinity of 25 or so of those. It'll be 40 by December 13th. I know that because we started the weekend after, the weekend at the end of the first full week we had been in lockdown, and it started just as kind of a whim of, I had a pilot, I could follow the Water City, I wanted to hear it out loud, and then everybody was like, this is so much fun, what are we going to do next week? And so we did, and that's been really great too in building a backlog of scripts that we can then when we go back into doing staged readings and public work, we're going to have a pool to draw from,
which is great. Now, for those who are watching, I know the Savannah Rep audience. I know the Savannah audience. We both know the larger Savannah audience. I don't actually have any questions about your day job, because if we start talking about your very fancy, cool day job, the comments are going to be lighting up, and they're all going to want spoilers on lots of things that you have NDAs on. So
there's nothing I work on that I can talk about. I will say that.
Yes. So I will say, if you are interested in finding out more about that end of Ellie's world, you can Google her, And then after the episode, you can be kicking yourself for having missed the chance to ask for those spoilers right now. But what I can talk about that is not under an NDA is something that delights me, which is that both you and our next guest, Dolette McDonald, are new members of the Savannah Rep board, which I am allowed to talk about. I checked on this show. And I am so grateful that you are both on the very strange mission I got towards the beginning of this pandemic was to double the board in the first 6 months if possible so that we could have a strong core to start deciding on budget and season by October. So I basically put together some of the smartest people that I knew, and then thankfully Roger Moss, who joined the board, thought of some of the smartest people that he knew. So for those that do not know, Ellie, who you've just had the pleasure of listening to, is going to help shape the future of Savannah Rep, which makes me happy. Do you have any sort of overarching thoughts, Ellie, about what it's like to return in a significant way to Savannah after being away for the better part of a decade?
I feel like in many ways, Savannah and I have never quite left each other. In fact, the pilot I was finishing last night was set in Savannah, as is most of what I have been writing over this quarantine period. But I am so thrilled to have been able to watch over the last 10 years the kind of the theater company, the theater community in Savannah continue to grow and develop, and the people who have kind of come through, the people who have stayed. It's just been a joy to, watch all of that even from very far away. And so I am delighted to get to be part of it again.
And I am excited to talk about just for a moment on this show, and I'll put our website below, savannarep.org, that in the very, very next few days to few weeks, we will be announcing some future partnership with Bespoke Plays, which is going to benefit both the LA and New York operations of Bespoke and the ground operations Savannah Rep. We're just working on the groundwork right now, but when it goes live, it will be available at savannarep.org, the press release as well as the details about it. And I will announce on a future OnStageOff as soon as we know what exactly is going on. But I wanted our audience to get a chance to know you and get to know what Bespoke Plays was, so the press release comes not as much of a surprise as a thrill. So that's not so much a question as just sort of an observation. But
well, I'm very excited to hear the details along with everyone else.
Yes. Well, I mean, you will be part of the details. We do talk to each other, not on this show.
Yes, that's true.
Okay. Although now that we're doing this, if you don't mind, I may just start opening StreamYard and doing I'm going to do a title sequence every time we have a StreamYard call and we'll just do it here without broadcasting it because this makes me feel really epic. So. Anything else you've got for our audience before I let you go? Obviously, your time is so appreciated, and your talents are many. Anything for folks out there that are watching and wanting to get back into the room as much as you and I are?
I would actually say, don't wait to get back in the room. I think that is the big lesson that the Bespoke family has kind of taken from this, as much as we are all anxious to get back into a theater and into a physical space, that, there is stuff that we've done over the last, 6 months that we never would have thought about doing, without these constraints. And as you're well aware, Anne Bogart wrote my favorite book about directing, and she talks a lot in there about the fact that art is kind of what is created in defiance of obstacles. And I think that having that thing to push against, having that thing that makes you think in a different way, is very often, where something new can come from. And the reminder that your community is still your community, even if we're not in the same place.
That was really nice. That made me feel really happy. Thank you, Ellie.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me on the show.
I'm going to say goodbye to you, and we'll talk in a little bit, and I'll make up the title sequence for our conversations.
Great. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. My second guest is writer, director, actor, producer, in whatever order those things need to go, Ellie Pyle. We'll be right back with Dolette McDonald.
Captain Crunch has disappeared.
The captain's gone!
If you find him, you could win part of $1 million reward in the Where's the Captain sweepstakes. Specially marked Captain Crunch cereal boxes have entry blanks with clues and detective kits to help find him. Millions will guess, answer right, and you have a chance to be one of 10,000 winners of a $100 share of the $1 million. To enter free, write for one of the 3 clues to Where's the Captain, Box 3225, Syosset, New York 11775. Now, where is the Captain?
Reno.
That last second is terrifying, but I do like their Sherlock Holmes hats. I've sort of harnessed the power of this to show you the quote that Ellie Pyle just said. Don't wait to get back in the room, Ellie Pyle. My next guest is nodding in the green room because my next guest is astonishing, and I felt like that would be something my next guest would agree with. I will be totally honest. I did a lot of background work. I found lots of amazing photos. I found videos of our next guest in big rooms all over the world and on television. And the truth of it is, I could have shown a couple of videos to set up our next guest. I want to spend the time talking to our next guest. I'm so excited. Welcome to the show, Dolette McDonald, everybody. Hello.
Hi. I'm so thrilled.
Dolette, I am so happy to have you here. Hi.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I am, I'm living my best life under the circumstances.
You are. I want to talk about something first, which has been giving me a lot of life in the last couple of months, ever since you and I became associated with each other. Again, thank you, Roger Moss, for many things.
Thank you, Roger. Yes.
But I obviously, we got introduced. I pitched the board to you. We had a great phone call, and you said, yes, this is a thing that I will be willing to do. Thank you. And so I followed your Facebook and your Gram and got on your social medias, and I have been loving the positivity, the kindness, the mediative manner in which you use technology. Everything that you post makes me feel better about what's going on in the world. How have you personally found that burning ember in you to keep doing that this whole time? And is that something that just has always been part of you, or have you been finding more of it as necessary in this crazy moment that we're in?
I think the latter. I as people say, I am a work in progress. And I started working on myself seriously at 50 years old. And it's just progressed to becoming who I am at this point in my life. And when I post that stuff, it's to me. It's not to anybody else. I post it to myself to remind myself of who I am and why I'm here. And it gives me such joy when it resonates with someone else. It really does.
I am happily one of the people with whom it resonates. I've tried to use this medium, the Facebook medium, the YouTube, the Instagram. I've tried to use it for good whenever possible. And you have those moments where you've written something brilliant, but something that cuts to the quick or is just incredibly pessimistic. And knowing that you're a voice out there that is giving so much optimism and courage to the world, it has helped me on multiple occasions erase those posts. Literally, you write them. There's been a couple of times I've written something in just at fever speed, and then I slowly hold down the backspace when I think about not needing to put that into the world right now. So
I'm right there with you. I do the same thing. I love the delete. My sister and I always laugh. We love delete. Because I type and I'm mad, I'm typing and I put it out there, but I never press send. And that's the key. You can pretend that you put it out there for the world to see, but you delete it all. And that's what I do.
Yeah, I had a friend who, there was a Gmail update several years ago now where there was you could do something, it was like a download or something where you had a 30-second window after sending every email that you could immediately pull it back. And my friend, who shall remain nameless, got really obsessed with the idea that she could write this just vitriol of, how can you be like this? Or why aren't you paying me enough at this job? And she would send it and then wait 10 or 15 seconds. It was like, I'm sure it was like gambling that, she could always pull it back. So So imagine her surprise the day that they changed the plugin without telling anybody, and it didn't exist anymore, and that first email went out. So
nice.
Yeah, I will always remember her face when that email got sent, and since then I have never wanted to play the gambling game of that, putting something into the world that you can't yank back anymore.
That's right. That's
now,
right.
I love talking about your positivity and your thoughtfulness. You are also, a lot of Savannahans are beginning to appreciate the sheer raw talent of you because of your association with Savannah Jazz and your many outdoor concert series and all the collaborations that you do. But I don't know that everybody knows that you are now local, that you are now a Savannian. When did you get here? And just real quickly, what was the driving force of getting you into this beautiful town?
I moved to Savannah May 31st, 2018. And my best friend of over 40 years, my BFF, and her husband live in Pooler.
Perfect.
So I lived in Naples, Florida, and we used to visit back and forth, once a month. We'd go there, they'd come here, whatever. And my wife and I started to really enjoy Savannah and enjoy what it had to offer. And and it wasn't like that in Naples. Something was missing for us in Naples, and we were at a point where we wanted to move, but we thought we would move in our area. And once we started coming to Savannah, a little light bulb went over our head, and we're like, maybe it's okay to get away from what we know. She had been there for 40 years in Naples, Florida, and I had been there for 20. So it was a huge decision, and it's the best decision we've ever made. I'm close to my BFF and I can grow old together. Oh. We were young women together. Now we can grow old together. And it's just, and I had said in a recent interview where the interviewer asked me how I felt about Savannah and what I love about Savannah. And quite honestly, it makes me feel like I'm home. Savannah is a big hug for me. A lot of what was missing where I was in one of the most beautiful towns in America, I'm finding in Savannah. I feel like I can live my life authentically. I don't have to pretend to be someone else. Mm-hmm. I am accepted. The music is fabulous. The people are fantastic. Even if they don't like you, they're kind to you. It's true.
You're totally right.
And, the art, the scat is fabulous. And the history, there's just so much here that we appreciate. So that's why. That's what led me to Savannah.
We could extract 30 to 45 seconds of that and put that in a Visit Savannah ad, and that, I feel like people would be getting on the interstate right now to come change their life.
They should.
That's always that question is what's the population moment when a city becomes unsustainable at what it already is. Mm-hmm. I know, New York has gone through that so many times over the last 40 years. I know Chicago and Milwaukee, Savannah being a much smaller version of that. It is that right. It's that I want to shout it from the rooftops and I also want to keep it for myself is always the way I feel about Savannah.
Yeah.
This show seems to be doing a little bit of both. I've had multiple people from my New York and Los Angeles connections write me after watching this show and say, I'm literally like booking a vacation to Savannah because something about the city permeates the way that everyone talks about it, And I'm like, good, come spend your money, come see it, come next year, come see a show, spend your money, and then go back, and then come back. Now, Dolette, the word prolific is overused, but you are it. I have known your voice my entire life, and that is because you are on some of my favorite records. You have worked with everybody. You have worked with the Talking Heads and David Byrne as a solo artist. You've worked with the Rolling Stones. You've worked with the Police and Sting. You have sung more in your life than I think an entire choir at an Episcopal church could claim. When did you realize that what you had was a gift you needed to share? How old and when did you first transfer the gift you have into your professional career? What was that moment?
I love saying this. I didn't used to like saying this. I was embarrassed about it, but I'm a church girl. And I love now as an adult, I really love being a church girl. That was an experience that you can't buy. So my mother was an evangelist, and I used to warm up her audience at the age of 6, and I was a hit. And so that led to me singing in church. And from there, I went to a high school of music and art. I went to Arts High School in Newark, New Jersey, where I was raised. And from there, I moved to New York. And, the whole, the backstage in show business magazines I was turned on to. And the rest is history. I did a lot of auditions, and I thought I really wanted to be in the theater, but unfortunately I couldn't dance. Well,
confessions. Here on this show, you're hearing it, folks.
But in the the sense of really dancing. I mean, I could move, but I couldn't dance. And they would always say, well, she's got a great voice, but she cannot dance. So fortunately, at those theater auditions, there were also producers that produced music. They would sneak into those auditions and listen for singers. And it was during the disco era, and that's how I got started recording.
And who was the... Did it feel to you like a very organic, that it was just that it once it started it snowballed, or was there anyone in particular that sort of championed you early on, or was it very much that you just went from gig to gig to gig because you were so good? Which one? What did it feel like to you in the moment, at least?
It was a little bit of both. I was working with a disco group called the Bombers, and there was a my friend, my dear friend, Buster Cherry Jones. He was from Memphis, Tennessee, and he lived in Canada. And he asked me to sing on one of his records. I was recording with him. And from there, he introduced me to Talking Heads. And so I have to give him credit. And he was probably the first person that really saw that I had something to offer and where it could blossom. And but after that, it was just organic.
And if I am wrong I'm going to take a stab at this piece of information about your bio, and please correct me as loudly as you need to if I've gotten this wrong. But your voice has been on stage. Your voice is on an album called The Catherine Wheel.
Yes.
Which is a David Byrne album. And I know that it was turned into a theater piece. It's actually an album that I really, really love. It's the album, Poison is on that album, if I'm right. And it's a beautiful vocal duet between you and David Byrne. Did that recording, was it what was played during the stage production that Twyla Tharp did of Catherine Wheel?
I don't know.
Okay.
I have no idea. I wish I knew.
Dolette, I think it is possible that your voice was on Broadway in the 80s, and I'm going to see if I can independently confirm that.
I will have to follow up and check that out.
I got really excited too because it felt like a really lovely sort of. Obviously, David Byrne has more recently. I mean, American Utopia, which was on Broadway. He has sort of and obviously, I'm very familiar with the Making Sense video.
Stop Making Sense, yeah.
Stop Making Sense,
Mhm.
and obviously the Talking Heads were working inside of these very crossover theatrical idioms. Then I feel like he has finally sort of confronted the fact that a lot of what he does is theatrical. So I was fascinated. I had not realized that Catherine Wheel had become a musical. Although I think of David Byrne as a theater artist now. If it's true or if it's not, I still think Poison is one of the finest tracks on God's green earth. But if it is true, we're breaking that news here.
That's
Two things.
right here. That's right.
Now I've seen you dance. I've seen your video of you dancing.
I can move. I can still move. At 68 years old, I can still move. However, I am not a dancer in the classical sense.
Right. Which a lot of people, between you and me and the 2,000 or so people that will watch this episode, I'm right there with you. I'm a strong mover. I'm a strong mover. And there's definitely been rooms I've been in. I have punched above my weight in some of my Broadway auditions. I've been in rooms I know I can't dance.
Mhm.
And I always think it's not to say that he can't dance, because he really can, but like I try to do the Christopher Fitzgerald thing. He's a great character actor. And I always do the thing where I'm like, well, if I go in and I'm funny enough and I'm right enough, they'll forgive the dance.
Mhm.
And they'll turn it into someone that stands off to the side and has really good rhythm. But I think, it's amazing. Your theatrical career probably would have been incredible, but it would have been very different than what you did do. I think
totally different. Totally different.
I want to be acknowledged. I have one more question, but we're at the amount of time I said. May I hold you for one more question? Is that all right, Dolette?
Of course.
The question I have, which I think a lot of viewers will be interested to hear, you've spent so much of your life on the road, and not even on the road in the same way. What is there a simple sort of easy way to describe what that life is like, moving across the world for so many years? What is that like? Because I know so few people experience it in their lives. What is that like?
For me, it was a lesson in discipline. As a singer, when you're on the road like that, there's so much that's against you. The weather, the travel, just the venues with the air conditioning or the cold, and it's not, conducive to always being your best. So I was focused. I thank God for Joan Lader. Because I had, this is a long story, but I'll shorten it. I had had a surgery that didn't turn out so well. And I was just starting my momentum, and Joan Lader saved my life and helped me to regain the use of my vocal cords. And so after that happened, I stopped drinking, I stopped smoking, I stopped doing drugs, I stopped doing everything, because she impressed on me how important it was for me to just stay focused. And so for me, it was a different experience, because I couldn't hang out, I couldn't party, I just had to focus on the work. And I was focused on the work. I go to places now that I had been, and it's like the first time I've been there, because I never took the opportunity to see all these fabulous places and go out and go on tours and enjoy the other countries. And I never did that. I was in my room steaming and getting ready for the show. So, and I would occasionally go out to dinner, but I didn't really do things that would have jeopardized me as a singer. But that was just my experience, because I had a special case. Now I go back to those places, and it's great because I get a chance to really enjoy where I've previously been.
I love that.
Does that make any sense?
It makes perfect sense. I know there are so many people, whether or not they know why they're grateful. There's so many people that are grateful for what I'm sure was many years for you of that diligence and real determination has caused you to have this just extraordinarily. I mean, when I say extraordinarily long, I'm not making a joke about you being in your 60s. It's that so many artists are cut short so soon, and so I mean, even people like, I think of like Scott Weiland, who should have been blessing us with that voice for 20 more years or 30 more years or 40, and so I think two of the things I just am so grateful that for you are that your gift is so beautiful, and also that you have been able to give so much of it, and to some degree it's that diligence that you're talking about. Means we can enjoy you today in a way that we have lost so many people after 5, 10, 15 years of the grind.
Well, can I just say one thing? I had the privilege of seeing my idol, Alberta Hunter, at the Cookery in the 70s. And she was 80 years old. And that, for me, I said, well, if I take care of myself, because she had 3 acts as well. I'm in my 3rd act. She was a singer, then she was a nurse, then she was a singer. I was a singer, and I spent 12 years in hospitality, and now I'm back to singing again. And I didn't know when I saw her that she was going to pave the way for me in that way. But, she's been my joy, every time I think, something negative about my voice or whatever, I go and read a few passages of her book and I'm cool again.
I love it. I love it so much. Dolette, Savannah Rep has brought many great things to my life. I will be selfish for a second and say one of them is our new friendship, which I'm just so excited to keep developing.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
And I do need you, please, to take care of yourself, because I have so much I need you to do on the board. We've got so much theater to make, and I know you just got here, but I mean, I'm so excited. I talk a lot, and I think I pitched this to you when we were talking originally. As Roger also knows, like Savannah, it has a world-class orchestra and a world-class music festival and a world-class film festival.
Yes.
They deserve, and it is time for a world-class theater company.
Yes.
There are too many artistic directors, actors, designers, directors. There are too many good people who are great, to do great work. Yeah. For that to be sort of the redheaded stepchild of the way arts are treated in the city. I'm just so grateful that you had already been that you had come out to the warehouse and had taken a stab at being part of our community, so that Roger knew that you'd be a good fit. So I'm grateful to you for finding us. I'm grateful for you that you will be part of us, and I'm grateful that you're on the show today.
I'm honored. Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. This has been a treat. Thank you so much, Ryan.
All right, and we'll talk really soon as well.
We will.
My third guest is the incredible Dolette McDonald. Her voice can be heard. I'm going to do the same thing I did with Ellie Pyle. Google Dolette. There are playlists. There are playlists on Spotify, the name of which is Dolette McDonald, and it's everything that you can hear her voice on. And I may just start a StreamYard playlist of it in the next couple of days, because I think it's 9.5 hours of music, and I think the Savannah Rep Facebook page could use that kind of good content. If you're just joining, you missed everybody. But the good news is, in about 3 minutes, this live video is going to become an archived video. But I'll tell you that my name is Ryan McCurdy. I'm proud to be the Executive Artistic Director of Savannah Rep. I do want to do the pitch I always do at the end of the show, which is to remind you that we have a venue, a beautiful warehouse venue right now for Savannah Repertory Theater. And although we are not in it and can do nothing with it, bizarrely, it costs the same amount of money. So we need your help. So many of you have given. We have raised well over $20,000 in the last few months to keep the overhead alive and to keep the building ready for us to come back. But every penny helps. I'm very grateful to say, because it's the first OnStageOff of October, that we met our September matching gift. We had an incredible anonymous patron give a $500 matching gift to the company for September. We matched that, so we pulled in $1,000 for September. The same donor, bless her, has set up the same matching gift for October. So we are at 0 of 500 so far for October. If we can get to that 500, we'll take in 1,000. And I will tell you one thing, it will defer so much of what we need to keep our operations running until we're back on stage. SavannahRep.org/Ghostlight is where you can give any amount towards our matching gift this month. And when we get to the holidays, we've got some fun holiday presents in mind for you. Thank you so much for being part of the show. I do want to tell you that next week we're going to do something fun. We are 2 months in. We are 8 episodes into OnStageOff. And going back and watching some of the previous episodes, we have had an embarrassment of riches. So I'm going to cut together a clip show from our first 2 months to air next week in this slot, Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you missed Bill Irwin, if you missed Michael Cerverus, if you missed Moritz today, if you missed Dolette and Ellie, we're going to have an entire clip show about an hour's wise at next Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're calling it OnStageOff, our first 2 months. We're looking forward to having you there in the same time slot. If there's good enough Wi-Fi in the car that I will currently be in, headed back to Manhattan, then I will be live tweeting and live commenting as we watch the show together. Again, thanks for being part of our show. You're why we do it. The audience is why we make the theater. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week. But until then, hey, Mary Chifo, take it away.
Till next time, great stories, great theater.
The Ghostlight, a single bulb left center stage after each performance, has traditionally served as a supernatural offering to those who came before us and those we have lost, to ensure that the theater, their theater, never goes dark.
That the magic of theater continues. Theaters from Broadway to the West End, Los Angeles to Savannah may be closed for now, but their ghost lights remain lit.
Our spirits remain hungry, our responsibilities clear. We look at this as an opportunity, a chance to build on the work we've done.
A chance to embrace our theatrical roots and create new adventures.
What we do now paves the way for the years to come, for the Savannah rep of the future.
We promise that the ghost light will burn brightly until it is safe to begin again.
It is our responsibility to carry on the traditions that precede us. We are Savannah Rep.
A home for great stories and great theater. The hands of the clock will move again, and this is not the end of the story.
It's a new beginning.
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 And we'll see you soon.